We're going to break down a pretty huge topic today using the source material. We are diving deep, and I mean deep, into a new global gold rush. It's a wild story that connects this tiny, desperate island nation with a multi-trillion-dollar treasure and, the future of our entire planet.
So, our story today, it doesn't start in some fancy boardroom or a government building. Nope, it starts right here on a supermarket shelf with a single watermelon. And its price tag? A staggering $37 for one watermelon. Yeah, that watermelon had to travel a very long way to get to this tiny remote island nation in the South Pacific called Nauru. Why? Because Nauru's own land, well, it just can't grow things like that anymore. And this is an island that was once defined by incredible, almost unbelievable wealth. Now it's so desperate that it's making a gamble that could literally alter the world.
So, to really get why Nauru is right at the heart of this new global resource rush, you have to look at its tragic history with the last one.
Okay, so check this out. For a little while back in the 70s, Nauru was fantastically wealthy. We're talking second richest nation on Earth per capita, right behind Saudi Arabia. And what was the source of all this money? Phosphate. Basically, hardened bird droppings that covered the entire island. But the very thing that made them rich is what destroyed them. The mining completely stripped 80% of the island, leaving behind this desolate, barren moonscape. Just nothing. So with the phosphate gone, the government just scrambled. They started turning to a bunch of, pretty sketchy schemes just to stay afloat. They were selling passports, they became an offshore banking hub for something like $70 billion in Russian money, and they even took cash to host these really controversial refugee camps for Australia. And one by one, each of these plans just fizzled out or got shut down, leaving Nauru even more desperate than before. And that desperation? That's exactly why Nauru is now pinning all of its hopes on a brand new, totally untapped resource, one that's been quietly forming for millions and millions of years, at the very bottom of the ocean. So what are we talking about here? Polymetallic nodules. Now, they're basically these potato-sized rocks just sitting there, scattered all over the seabed. And they're deep. 5 kilometers down. That's over 3 miles straight down in total, crushing darkness. But here's the thing. These are not just any old rocks. No way. They are jam-packed with super valuable metals. The estimated value of the nodules in just one zone of the Pacific, a mind-boggling $16 trillion. So why the huge rush all of a sudden? It really all comes down to one thing: the green transition. See, these nodules, they're loaded with the exact metals, we're talking nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese, that are absolutely essential for building EV batteries, the battery in your phone, all of our electronics. We need billions and billions of tons of this stuff. But hold on, you can't just send a submarine down there and start scooping them up. The deep ocean, it's governed by this really unique international treaty. And at its heart is this really powerful, almost idealistic principle.
So according to the UN's Law of the Sea, the deep seabed belongs to, all of us. It's called the Common Heritage of Mankind. The treaty set up this whole organization, the International Seabed Authority, or ISA, specifically to manage this shared resource. And the whole idea is to make sure any profits are shared fairly, especially with developing countries.
Now, the system they came up with is pretty interesting. For a private company, say the metals company, to go mining, it needs a country to back it, to be its official sponsor. In this case, that's Nauru. So Nauru is the one who applies for the license, and they're also supposed to be the ones making sure the company actually follows all the environmental rules.
Right. So this whole setup brings up a pretty massive question, doesn't it? Can a tiny, cash-strapped nation like Nauru, a country that is absolutely desperate for money, really regulate a huge, well-funded corporation? And this is what critics are really worried about. They call them sponsorships of convenience. The argument is that these big companies are specifically picking small, vulnerable countries because they know they can't put up a real fight or provide strong oversight. One former official at the ISA even said this setup is exactly the opposite of what the Law of the Sea intended. It's basically a loophole.
And all of this whole sponsorship thing, it brings us right to the heart of the conflict. The huge, high-stakes debate over whether we should be touching this pristine, mysterious ecosystem at all.
Okay, so the people who are for this, they argue that deep-sea mining is basically the lesser of two evils. They point to how destructive mining is on land. I mean, look at the nickel mines that are just tearing up Indonesia's rainforests right now. Their argument is, isn't it better to mine a seabed where nobody lives?
And yeah, the CEO of the metals company, Gerard Barron, he puts it pretty bluntly. He says, look, we need billions of tons of these metals. That's a fact. The real question society has to answer is, where are we going to get them from? We have to make a choice.
But the other side sees this completely differently. The president of French Polynesia calls it, and this is a quote, the last frontier of human madness. They argue that rushing in to exploit the last untouched wilderness on the entire planet, an ecosystem we barely even understand, is just unbelievably reckless.
And what's at risk down there? 5 kilometers deep? It is immense. This deep-sea world, it's not empty. It's packed with a huge diversity of life, and most of it is completely unknown to science. Seriously, every time researchers go down there, they find new species. Things like gummy squirrels and squid worms that live right on these nodules. Scientists are warning that the mining process could create these huge sediment plumes, basically mud clouds, that could smother life for miles around. And the noise and the light would just completely disrupt a world that has been dark and silent for millions of years.
So while the rest of the world was having this big debate, the metals company and its sponsor, Nauru, they made a move. A really bold move that basically hit the fast-forward button on this whole thing and threw the entire international process into chaos.
Back in June of 2021, Nauru triggered this obscure little clause in the treaty called the 2-year rule. What that did was it put a ticking clock on the ISA. It forced them to finalize a complete set of mining regulations within 2 years. Well, they missed the deadline. July 2023 came and went, the rules weren't ready, and now the door is technically open. The metals company says it's going to apply for the first ever license in 2025, even without a finished rulebook.
And this breakdown of the whole global process, it has created a huge opening for other players. For example, the United States, and this is key, the US never actually signed the treaty, is now thinking about bypassing the whole global process entirely and just issuing its own licenses.
So what you have is this process that was designed to be slow, careful, and internationally managed to protect a resource for all of humanity, and it's been totally upended. What we might have now is a new, kind of lawless race to the bottom of the ocean.
And that leaves us with this final, kind of heavy thought. Remember how Nauru's story started? With a resource rush that completely destroyed their island. And now, here they are, at the very center of another one. So is this whole grand experiment, this idea of a common heritage of mankind, is it actually going to work? Or are we just about to watch the same old story of exploitation play out all over again, only this time in the deep